My name is Dennis Fagan. I'm a retired detective in New York City.
Police say Benoit strangled his wife and suffocated his 7-year-old son.
Leaving his son's body on the child's bed next to a Bible.
Double homicide, suicide.
Strangled his wife and suffocated his son, then hanged himself.
What role, if any, did his use of steroids?
You need to check those bottles and see the expiration date.
Killing your own son.
This is his wife. And their 7-year-old son.
Therefore, other than my comments, there will be no mention of Mr. Benoit's name tonight. On the contrary, tonight's show will be dedicated to everyone who has been affected by this terrible incident.
Not much is documented on the early life of Nancy Toffaloni. We know she came into the world on a spring day in 1964 in Boston, Massachusetts, and any information about her family seemed to lean towards her having a typical middle-class upbringing in the quiet suburbs of Boston. Growing up in Boston during the mid-1960s was a time marked by significant social and political shifts, as well as a distinctive lifestyle influenced by the city's rich history and cultural heritage. Against the backdrop of the Kennedy dynasty's prominence in American politics, Bostonians experienced a blend of pride and tragedy intertwined with the family's legacy. The city was a hotbed for civil rights movements and workers' reform. The city's prominent history no doubt had its hand in shaping Nancy's fiery spirit and tough-as-nails attitude. At some point in her youth, Nancy and her family travelled south to the warmer climates of Florida. She got involved in wrestling at a very young age of 15. The promotion was Florida Championship Wrestling, and the venue was the well-known Eddie Graham Sports Stadium in Orlando. She accompanied Black Jack Mulligan to the ring in her first appearance as his valet while she was still in high school.
He's in any mood to talk to anybody.
The bull is raging. Angelo Mosca, Kevin Sullivan, Leroy Brown, all of you. It's going to be like rats deserting the ship around here, brother.
Dean, hokey pokey stuff on me. Because I'm telling you right now, I know that your daddy, you want you to call home because I'm going to start checking the missing kids things because you may be missing. Now, Kevin Sullivan, you've took this young lady. I understand that was a very successful model at one time on the top of the world. Could have demanded any price you wanted to for Playboy or anything like that. And look what you done to her. And now you're hanging out with a rabble, with a bunch like Kevin Sullivan and Purple Haze. Doesn't that bother you just a little bit?
No, not at all. Not at all, Jack. You know, there is one thing I would like to know. Superstar was talking about putting his pythons around Kevin and around the Purple Haze. Well, what I'd like to know is when are you going to put your pythons around me?
She graduated from DeLand High School and started working in a call centre for State Farm Insurance. It was during her time at State Farm that she first encountered Jim Dowse, who would later become her husband. Their meeting likely occurred through mutual acquaintances or in the course of their daily lives in the DeLand, Florida area. Jim spent his time between working as a flight attendant for Eastern Airlines and his true passion performing as a pro wrestler. He soon became known as a rising star on the scene in the early 80s. Dowse competed in various regional wrestling promotions. One notable promotion he worked for was the National Wrestling Alliance, NWA, which was a prominent wrestling organisation before the rise of WWE's national dominance. Dowse competed in NWA-affiliated territories which were scattered across different regions of the United States and operated semi-independently. These territories served as breeding grounds for aspiring wrestlers and provided opportunities for them to hone their skills before making their mark on a larger stage like the WWF. When he was coming up on the scene, Nancy was right alongside him. Nancy had been selling programs at these shows and even appeared as Para, an apartment wrestler in Stanley Weston Sports Review wrestling magazine. Apartment wrestling was a niche form of pro wrestling content. The term apartment wrestling refers to a concept popularized in the 1960s and 1970s where female wrestlers and models acted out wrestling scenarios in an indoor setting, like a hotel room or the interior of a house or apartment. These matches were often depicted in magazine spreads or short films and were designed to appeal to a specific audience interested in the combination of wrestling and eroticism. Nancy's scenes in Stanley Weston Sports Review magazine were quite popular and caught the eye of a few players in the industry. Bill Otten, who was a respected wrestling photographer, took notice of Nancy due to her remarkable appearance and physique. He suggested she would be an ideal subject for an upcoming project to his colleague, the photographer George Napolitano. Following Otten's endorsement, Nancy was featured on the cover of the June 1984 edition of Wrestling All-Star magazine. This was without a doubt her big break, posing alongside Billy Jack and a longtime model friend of Nancy, Linda Johnson. Linda was scheduled for more shoots with Otten, but was a no-show, abandoning her ticket into the world of wrestling. Interestingly, Linda went on to marry Duff McKagan from Guns N' Roses fame. It's safe to say that these women moved in interesting circles. After being promoted to a cover girl for the magazine, Nancy's career trajectory in the wrestling world continued to rise. This exposure increased her visibility and opened up further opportunities for her. Nancy's path ultimately led her to meet Kevin Sullivan, a fellow Bostonian and prominent figure in wrestling at the time. Sullivan saw potential in Nancy and wanted her to be part of his wrestling entourage. After months of convincing, Nancy agreed and she began her journey as an on-air valet, taking on the name Fallen Angel. This marked a significant transition for Nancy as she stepped into a more active role within the wrestling community. Sullivan's troupe, or the Satanists, were a response to the pearl-clutching league of Christian mothers who were terrified of the demonic Ozzy Osbournes, Slayers and Judas Priests who were enveloping the minds of their fragile youth, under their bed, in their closets, and indeed in their heads.
Like the words, to me, they're all Satan worship, about hell, about devils, about satanic. I don't want anything to do with it.
This stable of degenerates was comically evil, splashed in heavy metal makeup with enough hairspray to euthanize a small box of rodents, which they no doubt had lying around to feed their snakes, which often accompanied them on photo shoots, promos, and often to the ring itself. So, where did this leave Jim Dowse, her husband and partner in crime in the wrestling world? Nancy was getting more bookings than him, and in bigger venues. But by his own admission, she was on the rise, while he was stagnating. She was doing shows in bigger venues to bigger crowds, like in Baltimore and Texas, while he struggled along as a journeyman. One evening after Nancy came home after an out-of-town show, Jim sat her down and expressed that he felt he was holding her back, that they were also naturally drifting apart. Sadly, they both recognized that their marriage had come to an end. Upon their initial separation, Nancy's career skyrocketed. Dowse admitted that this was without a doubt the worst year of his life. They would run into each other throughout the years in airports, running to shows, with Nancy even meeting Jim's new wife, whom he is married to this day.
I don't have any hard feelings for Kevin. Last time I talked to Kevin was probably 10 or 11 years ago after the horrible tragedy. I felt betrayed at the time, but now I'm 35, 40 years later, married to a wonderful person for 31 years, my wife Sue, and she's amazing. It worked out great. Everything worked out.
Did you stay in contact over the years with Nancy from time to time?
We did talk off and on, what she was doing, what her career was doing, and so forth. Then it was odd. I would run into her in airports all over the place, run into her in Chicago or in Iowa one time. So I was on the road a lot. So one trip, I was running late from a bad man contest, and it was like the OJ thing, running through the airport.
Yeah.
Got to the gate right before they closed it, and got on the plane, and they said, "There's one seat in the back." All right, so I get on the plane, go all the way to the back, and Nancy's sitting right there. How you doing? I looked down, I said, "Nancy?" She goes, "Oh my God, sit down." We talked for 2.5 hours on the way to Atlanta, and then we changed planes in Atlanta, got on the next plane and sat together on the plane from Atlanta to Daytona. And then my wife was picking me up from the airport down that trip. So I get off the plane with my ex-wife and my new wife picking us up. It was pretty fun. Nancy put her arms around her and gave her a big hug and said, "Oh, I've heard so many good things about you," and everything else. And I said, "Sue, this is my ex-wife, Nancy."
In the late 80s and early 90s, Nancy's character, the Fallen Angel, under Sullivan's tutelage, began to take shape. The Dark Angel was an enigmatic and seductive figure. The character had that pulpy barbarian look, straight out of a Schwarzenegger movie, and she fit right in with Jim Sullivan and his Thunderdome crew of misfits. Kevin's career experienced a significant surge as he rose to prominence, both as a wrestler and a booker. He established himself as an influential personality within the major wrestling promotions, notably World Championship Wrestling, WCW, and Extreme Championship Wrestling, ECW. A lot of championships and a lot of federations. I'm not sure I know what a federation is. Nancy and Kevin's on-screen chemistry proved to be no act, as the two eventually tied the knot in 1992, solidifying their partnership both personally and professionally within the world of wrestling. Nancy and Kevin Sullivan's professional paths frequently intersected as they consistently collaborated across various wrestling promotions, with Nancy typically adopting a managerial role to complement Kevin. Her transition into World Championship Wrestling, WCW, began when she portrayed Robin Green, a seemingly innocent, shy fan of Rick Steiner, appearing in the audience and interacting with him. Her appearances were subtle at first, wearing big glasses, a Rick Steiner t-shirt, and embodying the persona of a loyal fan.
Now the ring, I want to invite Scott Steiner, Missy Hyatt, and a new young lady here. I told you had a girlfriend, didn't I?
Over time, Nancy's character slowly evolved into something more sinister.
You sure we're in the right room?
The reason why I chose the Steiners first
was because Rick had no weaknesses in the ring whatsoever. But his heart was another matter, which I showed you, didn't I?
This heel turn marked the beginning of her transition into woman, a more powerful and manipulative character.
My name is not Robin Green, and I'm definitely not from Milwaukee. I am woman. I am not a valet. I am not a manager. What I will be is a woman who will take control and conquer the wrestling world.
Nancy became one of the most recognizable female managers in WCW, known for her commanding presence and elegant but dark, mysterious demeanor. She aligned herself with Kevin Sullivan and quickly became a major force in the storylines. One of the key moments in her career came when she began managing the tag team Doom. Doom, comprised of Butch Reed and Ron Simmons, was a powerhouse tag team in WCW, both of whom were incredibly talented athletes and wrestlers. Doom first appeared as a masked tag team in 1989. Initially, their identities were kept hidden, and Woman served as their manager. This added an air of mystery and intimidation to the characters. Doom's personas were imposing and menacing, making them a formidable presence in the WCW tag team division. Under Woman's management, Doom initially feuded with the Steiner brothers, Rick and Scott Steiner, adding a personal layer to the storyline since Woman had betrayed Rick Steiner. As a team, Doom had great in-ring chemistry, combining power, speed and aggression, which, under Nancy's guidance, helped them rise through the ranks. Doom achieved major success in WCW, winning the WCW World Tag Team Championship at Capital Combat in 1990 by defeating the Steiner brothers. This win cemented them as one of the top tag teams of that era. Managed by Woman, Doom held the titles for 281 days, a highly respectable reign during that period. Woman's role in their success was crucial, as she added layers to their character development. Her interactions with other wrestlers and on-screen authority figures, combined with her glamorous yet dangerous presence, amplified the menace that Doom exuded. After their initial success, Nancy Sullivan as Woman eventually left Doom's side as their storyline progressed. After Nancy left Doom, they later aligned with Teddy Long as their manager, and Woman moved on to other storylines. She eventually became aligned with Ric Flair and the Four Horsemen, continuing to establish herself as a pivotal figure in WCW's storylines. Although Doom's time under Woman's management was brief, it had a lasting impact on WCW's tag team scene and on Nancy's career as a major figure in the wrestling industry. Ron Simmons in particular would go on to make history in wrestling, becoming the first African American to win a World Heavyweight Championship in a major promotion, when he captured the WCW World Heavyweight Championship in 1992. In 1993, Kevin and Nancy resurfaced in the up-and-coming ECW, where Nancy, once again going by the name Woman, managed Kevin Sullivan and the Tasmaniac to win the ECW Tag Team Championships. When Kevin left to return to WCW, Nancy stayed in ECW, taking on the role of manager for the Sandman and Too Cold Scorpio, not to be confused with Scotty Too Hottie. She effortlessly reinvented herself to align with the Sandman's persona, cracking open his beers, lighting his cigarettes, and even taking down his opponents with her own Singapore cane. She also stepped into the ring for the first time in ECW, teaming with the Sandman in a Singapore cane match against Tommy Cairo and Peaches. Another wrestler adopted the gimmick to some success a few years later in the WWF. What can you say? But Sandwiser's just doesn't have the same ring to it. Under Nancy's astute mentorship, wrestlers like Chris Benoit and Ric Flair achieved extraordinary levels of success. All the while, Nancy stood ringside, smirking confidently and stony-faced. As for the woman behind the mask, she must have been doing something right, and by all accounts was held in high esteem by her colleagues and figures in the wrestling community at large. So here is when things take a strange turn. Not yet a dark turn, but a strange one. So far we've briefly discussed Kevin Sullivan's climb to success, but we have not discussed Kevin Sullivan.
You maggot slime! You maggot slime! Come on, Jason! You maggot!
Welcome along to the Wrestling Fan Wrestling Show, you bunch of WrestleManiacs. I'm the big beefy boy, Shane O'Keefe.
And join us today as we dive headfirst into the rabbit hole of wrestling's resident Mad Hatter, the enigma wrapped in a riddle, Sully. No, not the guy that Tom Hanks played, or indeed the one from Avatar. I'm talking about Kevin Sullivan. Now, Kevin has a mad history within the realms of pro wrestling. A character that he played liked to revel in the macabre. But it was during the WCW days that Sullivan would pen some of the most bizarre chapters in wrestling lore. Kevin had influence both on the screen and off the screen. And off the screen, he would have been known as what is a booker. Can you dig it? Sucker! Not that booker, no. He would be known as a guy who would pen wrestling storylines. He had a famous one with Brian Pillman, which is another video entirely. And if you don't like that I'm not covering it here, just take it on the chin and say, I respect you, Booker, man. Because I'm writing the storylines. It's an in-joke. It's an in-joke. You mightn't get it. You might get it when we do the video on it eventually. Now, on screen, Kevin was known as the Taskmaster, not to be confused with the Shockmaster. Insert video clip here.
They call me the Shockmaster.
Maybe they were part of the Master family. Any relation to Chris Masters, maybe? So many Masters. Now picture this, Sullivan adorned in dark robes, orchestrating chaos with the grace of a demonic maestro. He also had a band of misfits known as the Dungeon of Doom. That is a whole nother story as well. There was a wrestler called Shark. There was Loch Ness, which was just giant haystacks from England. There was the Boogeyman or the Zodiac or whatever the fuck Bruce the Barber Beefcake wanted to be that day. So many horrible Bruce the Barber Beefcake. I get nightmares. I have nightmares, Bruce. Don't cut my hair. Only my man can cut my hair. I think the Big Show, this was like his debut. He became WCW champion because of the Dungeon of Doom. Well, it's the Giant. Yeah, he was Andre the Giant's son. I think that's what it was. I was very young, but even then I knew that was stupid. It didn't matter anyway, because Hulk Hogan just bet the shit out of everyone in a steel cage. The Dungeon of Doom was absolutely doomed from the start. They were all cannon fodder for the Hulkster brother. And that was kind of the problem with WCW and creating stars. They had egos like Hulk Hogan and Kevin Nash and Razor Ramon and Lex Luger and Sting, and they just had all these guys that were on top all the time, and it was hard for others to break through. So the guys underneath, like Eddie Guerrero, Chris Jericho, who broke the walls down in WW. Editor waits for me to say a letter. Not happening. Another wrestler on the undercard, who we have always referred to on this channel as Redacted, is none other than the former Pegasus Kid, Chris Benoit. Now we fast forward to 1997, and Sullivan seemed to have an eye for talent, and one of the most talented individuals is Chris Benoit. So with that in mind, Sullivan wanted to create a storyline for one Benoit to flourish.
Benoit happens to be a serpent in the egg.
Chris Benoit, the crippler, was about to cripple more than just his opponent though. He aimed to dismantle the boundary between fiction and reality. Sullivan orchestrates a tale of his own demise. He scripts an on-screen romance, real-life wife Nancy and the rabid Wolverine Christopher Benoit. The only problem was that Benoit and Nancy started developing real feelings for each other. I think Benoit was married. Editor, go check that out. Put it in afterwards. And Nancy was obviously married to Sullivan. Therefore, the illusion seeped into reality, and reality morphed into a fucking wrecking ball. I give it like a wrecking ball, demolishing Sullivan's marriage. So he basically booked his own divorce. Now, Sullivan came out years later and said that they were already separated and heading for divorce. Still, a bit of a fucking mad thing to be writing down a storyline where your wife leaves you for a wrestler and then she actually leaves you for said wrestler. Well, you just love to have that power. I wish I had that power. And Shane and Cody Rhodes become the bestest of friends forever. The end. That's the real finish to Cody's story. Wow! Speaking of stories, here's a word from today's sponsor, Heidenreich's Poetry. If you want a bit of poetry in your life and you're not going to fucking write it yourself, well, why not employ Heidenreich? Heidenreich will write some lovely poems for you that will probably make you scream.
I have spent a lifetime looking for a friend.
Just like he did Michael Cole, but now you know his poetry works. It's a real art form.
I bet you're wondering why I got you back here, Michael. Because I am so often misunderstood. No one knows the pain inside No one knows the tears I hide.
Heidenreich. Heidenreich.
listening.
Forget the Hardy Boys' poetry in motion. No. Heidenreich's poetry in motion will certainly give you feelings again. I miss those.
Love and hate are two very strong things.
Anyway, back to the video.
Life has a curious way of imitating art, but it's not always a beautiful portrayal. Art serves as a mirror to reality, capturing its rawness and unpredictability. It's a reminder that art is not always about portraying an idealized version of life. Rather, it's about capturing its essence and all its complexity, both the good and the bad. Born Christopher Michael Benoit on May 21st, 1967 in Montreal, Quebec, Canada, he exhibited a passion for wrestling from a young age. Benoit began his journey into the world of wrestling in the late 1980s. He was taken into the rigorous training grounds of the Hart family dungeon, under the tutelage of the legendary Stu Hart. Located in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, the Hart family home was a beautiful Middle Canadian, large family house. Its red brick facade exuded warmth and charm, complemented by the tranquility of the surrounding pine trees. From its vantage point, the house offered a serene view of the bustling city of Calgary in the distance, a juxtaposition of urban energy against a backdrop of natural beauty. Under the house, however, was Stu's playground, where he roared at young muscled men and whipped them into shape in what became affectionately known as the dungeon. What did the neighbours think? The dungeon served as a training facility where aspiring wrestlers underwent grueling sessions to hone their craft under Stu Hart's watchful eye.
Oh, God! No. Oh, I give up. It's over. No, it's not over yet.
Many legends rolled around on the green mats of Stu Hart's basement. The Hart brothers, obviously, Ken Shamrock, Edge, Billy Graham, and believe it or not, Jushin Thunder Liger. His head must have gone through the fucking ceiling. Benoit's training in the dungeon provided him with a strong foundation in technical wrestling, emphasizing mat-based techniques and submission holds, which would become hallmarks of his in-ring style. It was here he learned a lot more than just the physical aspects of wrestling, but how to navigate the business as well. The influence of the Hart family extended beyond Stu himself. Benoit developed close relationships with members of the Hart family, including Bret the Hitman Hart and Owen Hart, both of whom were established stars in the wrestling industry. Benoit's association with the Hart family continued to be a significant factor in his career, even as he ventured beyond the confines of Calgary. His ties to the Hart legacy lent him credibility within the wrestling community and provided him with opportunities to showcase his talents on a broader stage. In 1985, Benoit made his professional wrestling debut in the Canadian independent circuit, where he quickly garnered attention for his technical prowess and intense in-ring style. His remarkable abilities caught the eye of talent scouts, leading to his signing with New Japan Pro Wrestling, NJPW, in 1986. In Japan, Benoit further refined his skills, earning a reputation as one of the most gifted and hard-hitting performers in the business. What people began to realize about Benoit was that he was a seriously hard-working professional. He was punctual, committed, and dedicated. In a lot of ways, he was a model wrestler, and it's no surprise he became a fan favorite. He was very much a wrestling fans wrestler, fans who were students of technique and technical acumen. After Japan, Chris found his footing in the WCW.
WCW, where the big boys play.
He became known as the Canadian Crippler, or sometimes just the Crippler. It was in WCW that Chris established a very good personal relationship and friendship with Eddie Guerrero. They were two parts to the four-man stable, the Radicals, the other being Perry Saturn and Dean Malenko. Shout out to Dean Malenko, bar some health issues, is the only one of them who got out of the industry unscathed. Vince, of course, harvested the talent of the Radicals, and all of them were brought over to the WWF in 2000, which is often referred to as the Radicals Invasion, or simply the Radicals Jump. It was an exciting time for WWE, as these guys were hot property at the time. All of them had good success in their own promotion. Benoit and Guerrero had the biggest success, and their faces became synonymous with the WWE itself. Perry Saturn and Dean Malenko also made notable contributions to the company, though they may have not reached the same level of prominence as Benoit and Guerrero. After the Radicals made their leap to WWF, Benoit's personal life took a significant turn when he met Nancy, as we've already seen. This was not the most conventional start to a healthy relationship. Chris and Nancy's marriage started in a pressure cooker, under intense scrutiny. It's arguable that they never really had a great start to the relationship. They may have looked the part, but tensions in their marriage were often seen boiling under the surface. It said that Chris exhibited controlling behaviour and possessiveness towards Nancy, which led to strained relationships with peers. Chris was even arrested for allegedly assaulting Nancy in 2003. The charges were later dropped due to insufficient evidence, but the incident shed light on the troubled nature of their relationship. Nancy filed for divorce the same year, citing abusive behaviour and cruel treatment from Benoit as the reason for wanting to end their marriage. She is purported to have said that the marriage was completely broken at this point, a mere 3 years in. Nancy went as far as filing a restraining order against Benoit. Both the restraining order and the divorce were ultimately dropped. In the midst of all this, Chris was often taken to the side by his closest friend Eddie Guerrero and told to get his shit together. Eddie had a calming influence on Benoit. The two wrestlers had a strong bond both inside and outside the ring. Guerrero was known for his charisma, humour, and ability to connect with people on a personal level. Given the intense and demanding nature of their career path, having a trusted friend like Guerrero provided Benoit with emotional support and stability. Guerrero's positive presence helped alleviate some of the pressures and stresses that Benoit faced, providing him with a sense of comfort and camaraderie. As we have seen countless times throughout the history of wrestling, it is beyond demanding, both physically and emotionally. Their friendship was widely known and respected within the wrestling community, even down to their move together to the WWF. They were truly in it together. It was no surprise then that Guerrero's shocking and sudden death was a world-shattering event for Benoit. The loss of Guerrero was a significant blow to Benoit personally as well as to the wrestling world as a whole. Benoit mourned the loss of Guerrero deeply, and his grief was evident both in public tributes and in private moments. He really went all out on the Guerrero tributes. In-ring tributes, Benoit dedicated matches to Guerrero's memory, often incorporating Guerrero's signature moves or paying homage to his wrestling style during matches. Tribute speeches. Benoit delivered heartfelt speeches honouring Guerrero's life and career during wrestling events, expressing his grief and sharing fond memories of their friendship. Wearing armbands or attire. Benoit, like many wrestlers, wore armbands or customized ring attire featuring Guerrero's initials or image as a sign of respect and remembrance. Participation in memorial events. Benoit participated in memorial events and ceremonies held in honour of Eddie Guerrero, standing alongside other wrestlers to celebrate Guerrero's life and legacy. While his actions following Eddie Guerrero's death were undoubtedly heartfelt and genuine tributes to a close friend, in retrospect, some might interpret them as potentially indicative of underlying issues. Given what we know about Chris Benoit's later struggles, it's reasonable to consider whether his reactions to Guerrero's death could have been influenced by manic behaviour or overzealousness. However, when considering the potential influence of mental health disorders on Benoit's reactions, it's essential to recognise the complex interplay between grief and psychiatric conditions. Research suggests that individuals with pre-existing mental health issues may experience grief differently and be at a greater risk of experiencing complicated grief reactions. For someone like Benoit, who reportedly struggled with depression and potentially other mental health issues, his grief over Guerrero's death could have been further complicated by underlying psychological vulnerabilities. Mania, characterized by elevated mood, increased energy, and impulsivity, is one potential manifestation of bipolar disorder, a condition with which Benoit has been posthumously diagnosed. While it's speculative to attribute Benoit's behaviour solely to manic episodes, it's conceivable that his intense dedication to honouring Guerrero's memory could have been influenced by periods of heightened mood and energy associated with mania. WrestleMania, if you will.
That ain't right. I'll tell these fools anything but tell me the truth. Oh, that ain't right at all. What's wrong with it?
Do you think about those texts that he sent you? Because I guess, you were one of the last people that he communicated with, or at least attempted to. Do you think about what those might have meant or what had happened there?
I know exactly what happened, I think. I think that he was texting me after everything really happened, after everything went down, after the passing of his, and I'm trying to say it as PC as possible.
Sure.
Passing between his wife and his son. He was texting me going, "Hey, this is how you can find me." I think he texted me probably right before he committed suicide.
There is something so menacing about three-letter acronyms: IRS, CIA, FBI, ICE, DEA. They're all well known and elicit a sense of severity, even when it comes to illness, HIV, ALS, OCD. Acronyms often condense complex or weighty concepts into succinct forms, and when they're associated with powerful institutions or serious matters like law enforcement or taxation, they evoke a sense of gravity or even intimidation. In medical discussions, the mere mention of certain three-letter acronyms evokes a sense of gravitas and foreboding. From the pervasive threat of HIV to the relentless grip of OCD, and the devastating progression of ALS. These combinations of letters symbolize profound medical complexities. However, amidst the lexicon of afflictions, one acronym which is little known and often overlooked reality in contact sports is CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy. Much like its counterparts, CTE embodies a sense of severity, drawing attention to the lasting consequences of repeated head trauma. These concise labels not only denote medical conditions, but also carry an implicit weight, eliciting concern and respect, even before the full extent of their implications are understood. One of the eeriest things about CTE is a person cannot be diagnosed with it while they are alive. It is a posthumous diagnosis. However, there are signs.
First round, I wrestled some wrestler guy who's good, he's tough. Kept the pressure on him. Eventually, I got to take the takedown and stuff like that. I got 4-2.
Man, I was thinking, Asian brother can't get no love, man.
Hey, how you doing? It's about a few days. It's Tuesday. It's about a few days after my fight. I promoted that fight. I talked to Get Dacker after the fight. He's a pretty cool guy.
And there are causes.
We're after.
The most notable cause of which is repeated head trauma. Benoit was no stranger to impacts to his head. It is believed that Chris Benoit was suffering silently and significantly from the effects of CTE, dementia, depression, grief, and bipolar disorder. This was a disastrous cocktail. His mind was a maelstrom. His emotions were heightened by his change in brain chemistry, which in turn worsened his mood. A neurodegenerative spiral only worsened by hormonal imbalances from years of PED abuse and painkillers. Benoit's intense dedication to his career, coupled with the physical and emotional tolls of professional wrestling, may have exacerbated underlying psychological vulnerabilities. Benoit's intense dedication to his career, coupled with the physical and emotional tolls of professional wrestling, may have exacerbated underlying psychological vulnerabilities. Stressors in his personal life, such as marital discord and family pressures, could have further strained his mental well-being. The loss of the only man who had the strength and trust in Benoit to curb his stresses and calm him down, tragically gone. It was later alleged that Daniel, Chris and Nancy's son, had the genetic disorder Fragile X syndrome, and this was the cause of domestic problems in the Benoit family. It was also suggested that the track marks on Daniel's arms were the result of human growth hormone injections because Benoit and his family considered him undersized due to his condition. Benoit's co-workers and close friend, wrestler Chris Jericho, stated that from his own research on the condition, the symptoms fit Daniel to a T, all across the board. Concerning those who had publicly stated that they had no knowledge of Daniel having the condition, Jericho said, "If Chris had decided that he wanted to keep it to himself, you wouldn't have been able to pry that out of him with anything." Despite Jericho's initial statements regarding Daniel, he later stated in his 2011 book, Undisputed, "It turned out that Daniel didn't have Fragile X, but at the time it made sense because I was grasping at straws." There is a pervasive narrative where Chris Benoit became obsessed with what he perceived to be his son's shortcomings. He felt he was too small and weak, and he was worried that he would be held back in school. District Attorney Scott Ballard later released a statement saying that a source with access to Daniel's medical files found no mention of any pre-existing mental or physical ailments. Likewise, Daniel's teachers reported that he was on par with other students and not about to be held back as previously thought. Speaking publicly for the first time in a major public interview on Talk is Jericho podcast in 2016, Nancy's sister, Sandra Toffaloni, unequivocally denied any claims that Daniel had ever had Fragile X or any similar condition. She also stated that the claims of needle track marks on Daniel's arms were preposterous.
Hi, I just spoke to one of the other officers there. My name is Dennis Fagan. I'm a retired detective in New York City. I run the security for World Wrestling, and one of our wrestlers that lives down there is missing. And he told me to say we need a welfare check done.
Okay, what's the address?
130 Green Meadow Lane.
And what's his name?
Chris Benoit. It's spelled Benoit.
Okay, and he's a wrestler?
Yes, what happened is he's a very religious gentleman, and yesterday he was supposed to show up at a pay-per-view and never got on the plane, never showed up. They tried to reach his wife, Nancy. She doesn't answer. They tried to call his house. It's out of character for him. So at 3 o'clock this morning, there was a message left for one of the other wrestlers, and basically it says, the dogs are in the backyard, the back door is open, goodbye. And that was it.
Okay, what does he look like?
Chris is about 6'1", very muscular, very stocky, has a very wide neck, looks like a wrestler.
Okay.
Hi, you reached Dennis Fagan. Leave your name and number and I will get right back to you. Thank you.
When you have finished recording, you may hang up or press pound for more options.
Mr. Fagan, this is the Benton County Sheriff's Dispatch. I do have a couple of deputies out at Mr. Benoit's residence, but the gate is locked and there are two pretty aggressive canines, or aggressive German Shepherds out there that our deputies are unable to get in. If you happen to have a gate code or anything for him, if you could give me a call back at 770-461-4357. 770-461-4357. Thank you very much. Mr. Fagan.
Yes.
Hey, this is with Sheriff's Department Dispatch.
Yes, sir. How are you?
I'm doing good. Did you get my message, or did you just...
No, I just called the number back.
Okay, very good. I do have a couple of deputies out at Mr. Benoit's house.
Okay.
But the gate is locked, and they're unable to get inside. He's got a call box. Apparently nobody's answering that. And then the dogs are actually out in the front, so, and they're
all right, okay.
Yeah, and they're pretty. According to my deputies, they're pretty aggressive as well. So.
Bay County 911. What is your emergency?
Hi. The cops came to my house, and I just want to make sure that they're okay because they sent me over to my neighbor's house, Chris and Nancy.
What's your address?
I'm at 110 Green Meadow Lane, and they asked me to hop the fence because they have attack dogs, and I went in and the little boy and the mom are dead, and so I ran out to scream to them, but then they went in the house and they haven't come out yet. Are they okay? Have you
Okay, hold on just a moment.
I know where the controls are, but I'm not going in there until... Garrett! Tell the cops to come this way.
Okay, ma'am.
Did the cops call it?
Listen to me. What did the cops tell you to do?
They told me because this guy's a professional wrestler and I'm friends with him, and they said, can you go put the attack dogs in the kennel? And I did that. And then I went upstairs. Everything was open, so I was yelling, Nancy, Daniel, that's the little boy. And I went up to Daniel's room and he'd been killed. Okay. And then I went up to Nancy's where she sits to watch TV, and she had been strangled and had tape on her face. And then I didn't see Mr. Benoit. I don't know where he is. I didn't want to go down in the basement for some reason.
Okay, ma'am.
He might be dead. Oh, now there's more cops here, but those cops...
Ma'am, listen to me. What did the cops tell you to do? Did they tell you to go to the neighbor's house?
Yes. And
okay.
Now they came when I said everyone's been murdered, and they went in the house, and I said I looked in every room but the basement, and they went in the basement, and now they haven't come back out.
Okay, listen to me. Listen, we have got contact with our cops. But if
they're okay?
Ma'am, our cops are okay.
They're okay.
But if they told you to go to the neighbor's house, you need to stay over there, okay?
No, I'm here. I'm right outside the Benoit's house. No, they just said stay here in the driveway. I just got nervous because they never came back out.
You have contact with your SO people that live in the basement.
Okay, they do. She's talked to the cops in the house. Okay.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I was nervous that he might be in there and do something to them. I just don't know what.
The neighbor that was told by the police to get out of the house, she's the one who found the murdered bodies. And she said when the cops ran down in the basement and she hadn't seen them, she's afraid something has happened to the cops in the basement.
Your cops?
Listen to me. The SO dispatcher said he has contact with them and they're okay.
Okay, they're okay. And they're okay. Another cop here. So I just wanted to make sure your cops in the basement were okay.
Okay, everything's fine.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you. I just wanted to make...
Soon after, police officers gained entry into the house and found the bodies of Nancy, Chris, and their son Daniel. Chris had murdered Nancy on Friday night, Daniel on Saturday night, himself on Sunday night. On Monday, the police were standing in the house, shocked by what they had just walked into. Chris Benoit was found dead in his weights room. Nancy Benoit was found deceased in an upstairs bedroom, and Daniel Benoit's body was found in his bedroom. Nancy's limbs were bound prior to her death, with her arms being restrained with coaxial cables and her feet being duct taped together. A balled-up combination of a tube sock and tape was also found in the kitchen trash and appeared to be soaked in dried blood, which led police to believe that it was being used as a makeshift gag prior to Nancy's death. Her body was found wrapped in a blanket alongside a Bible. Injuries indicated that Benoit had pressed a knee into her back while pulling on a cord around her neck, causing strangulation. Daniel was suffocated and killed in his bedroom, and another Bible was left by his body. He had internal injuries to his throat area. Showing no bruises, Daniel's exact time of death is unknown. The reports determined Daniel was sedated with Xanax and likely unconscious when he was killed. His body had also just started to show signs of decomposition, but was not as far along as his mother's body. How Chris killed himself was as brutal as his family. He used a lat pull-down machine to carry out his suicide. He attached a weightlifting bar and other heavy objects to the machine's cables, creating a mechanism that would exert pressure on his neck. In addition to using the weight machine, Benoit also fashioned a noose using a cord or similar material. He placed the noose around his neck, securing it in a manner that would restrict airflow and cause asphyxiation. With the weight machine set up to exert pressure on his neck and the noose in place, Benoit initiated the mechanism, likely by releasing the weight or allowing it to descend. Combination of pressure from the weight and constriction from the noose would have led to a swift and fatal restriction of blood flow and oxygen to the brain. So what the fuck was Chris doing in the days between Nancy's death and his own? While we have no idea what his state of mind was, we have an outline of his actions which may or may not give insight into his thought processes. He wrote a suicide note and hid it in a third Bible, which was not found until detectives conducted a thorough investigation of the crime scene. He called Michael Parker and left a voicemail.
Hey Parker, this is Benoit again. It's about 5 to 2 in the afternoon. So I'm bullshit with you, man. Find out what happened. I was talking to one of the production crew guys on the flight home into Atlanta. He said you kind of got shafted over, and that really fucking sucks. But, you know, if there's anything I can do at all, man, take care, man. Hope all's well. Bye.
He texted a WWF referee, Scott Armstrong, and Chavo Guerrero, informing him that his family was sick and he would miss the upcoming PPV. He also spoke with the talent relations officer, doubling down on his lie that Nancy and Daniel were suffering from food poisoning. He made 2 Google searches, both equally disturbing. I'm going to go through these points separately and quickly to get a concise understanding of the direct aftermath of the murder-suicide. Bibles. The reason Chris Benoit placed Bibles beside the bodies of his wife and son has been the subject of much speculation. Some theories suggest that it may have been a sign of remorse or a final gesture of seeking forgiveness, aligning with the religious symbolism of the Bible. Others believe it might have been a reflection of Benoit's troubled state of mind, possibly indicating a ritualistic or symbolic act which could have been influenced by his deteriorating mental health. Suicide note. The suicide note was found in Chris Benoit's Bible, which was not one of the Bibles he placed next to the bodies of his wife Nancy and son Daniel. The note was discovered in Benoit's home in Fayetteville, Georgia, after police entered the house following concerns over Benoit's absence from a scheduled wrestling event. While the full extent of the note has never been officially released, it is reported that the note was short and cryptic. According to some sources, the note was not a detailed explanation or traditional suicide letter, but instead contained a brief message. Benoit reportedly wrote, "I'm preparing to leave this earth." The phrase suggests a premeditated plan to end his life, but it offers no clear explanation of his actions or the reasons behind the murders of Nancy and Daniel. The religious context of the note being placed in a Bible, combined with the act of leaving Bibles next to the bodies of his wife and son, suggests that Benoit may have been seeking some form of redemption or was experiencing a profound spiritual crisis. The note did little to provide closure, and instead it added to the mystery of what exactly led Benoit to commit such horrific acts. Voicemail to Michael Parker. Saturday, June 23, 2007, Benoit killed his wife, Nancy. Sunday, June 24, 2007, Benoit killed his son, Daniel. During this time, Benoit was also communicating sporadically with WWE, explaining his absence from scheduled events due to a supposed family illness. Sunday night, June 24, 2007, Benoit left the voicemails for Michael Parker just hours before taking his own life on June 25th. Content of the voicemails was strange and cryptic. Benoit reportedly apologized to Parker, though the specifics of what he was apologizing for were unclear. The message was said to be disconnected from reality, reflecting Benoit's troubled mental state. In these messages, Benoit did not directly explain his actions or intentions, nor did he mention the murders. Instead, the voicemails were vague and left Parker and others confused and concerned. The tone of the messages can only be described as off-putting, even disturbing, given the gravity of what had already transpired. Benoit's behaviour in the voicemails did not align with the severity of his actions, reflecting a disorientated state of mind. The fact that Benoit chose to leave such messages without any reference to the horrific events that had already occurred adds to the bizarre nature of the situation. Impact on Parker. These messages deeply unsettled Michael Parker, who later shared that he was confused and disturbed by them, especially once the full scope of Benoit's actions became known. After Chris Benoit killed his family, he sent a series of chilling text messages. He sent these messages to several people, including his colleague Chava Guerrero. The messages were sent on June 24, 2007, and included Benoit's address and the location of where his dogs were kept. In one message he stated that the dogs are in the enclosed pool area and the back door is open. These texts were alarming to his friends and colleagues, who then tried to contact him, but Benoit did not respond. Internet searches. He made 2 Google searches on his laptop, a passage from the Bible about a son getting resurrected, specifically the prophet Elijah's resurrection of a dead child. God sends Elijah to Zarephath, a town outside Israel, where he meets a widow who is on the brink of starvation. Despite her dire situation, she provides Elijah with food and water, and in return, God ensures that her supply of flour and oil never runs out. After this, the son of the woman, the mistress of the house, became ill. His illness was so severe that there was no breath left in him. She said to Elijah, "What have you against me, O man of God? You have come to bring my sin to remembrance and to cause the death of my son." Victor H. Matthews suggests that the woman uses sarcasm, designed to shame the prophet for being the cause of her son's death. Elijah does not try to rationalize with the grieving woman, and instead takes the son up to his bedroom, where he prays to God, asking for his help. Elijah then stretched himself upon the child 3 times and cried unto the Lord, "O Lord, my Lord, I pray thee, let this child's soul come into him again." The Lord heard Elijah's voice, and the soul of the child came into him again, reviving him. Elijah then takes the child downstairs and presents him living to his mother. "Now by this I know that thou art a man of God." And Elijah thus regains his honor and status. The other Google search was on the quickest way to break someone's neck. Although his internet search history showed him researching the most effective way to break a human neck, Benoit did not sustain a broken neck in his inquest. This puzzles me. He was coherent in his final days. A man with Alzheimer's and dementia, or with the brain of an 8-year-old, suffering with these, should not have been able to complete the most basic tasks. He was leaving voicemails, writing suicide notes. He was completely coherent, down to his own brutal suicide, where he devised the most preposterous and barbaric way to end his own life. I'm not suggesting he was thinking clearly, but there is a level of coherency which does not add up. He looked normal, he sounded normal. If his CTE was so bad, why the fuck wasn't he slurring his words? Despite sounding a bit rattled, he seemed completely normal, cold, and calculating. While looking through the Benoit crime scene photos, I saw a picture framed on the wall which appeared to be 3 handprints in blue. It appears to be prints of a father, a mother, and a child. There is something so haunting about seeing this empty house full of memories and accomplishments, children's toys, career memorabilia, and the everyday mundane like snack wrappers and soda cans in the wastebaskets. At some point I began to feel voyeuristic, leering into the life of a family I do not know, observing the interior machinations of a company store family. Then a cold sadness hits me when I realize that there isn't a family anymore. It's just a crime scene. And all those memories are now just evidence without a single soul to claim them. To quote Paul Heyman, 3 people died in that house and only one had the choice. Fuck him. The final thing which I want to do is read a social media post by Mick Foley. His thoughts sum up Nancy's legacy perfectly and the future of her legacy as a whole. I debated whether to abridge this, but decided it was so well written and insightful it should be displayed in full. For the past 13 years, Nancy Benoit's life has been largely defined in the public eye by how she died. I think it's about time we change that way of thinking. Wouldn't it be nice if we could pause for a moment to remember instead how she lived, how she worked, and to reflect on what her legacy in pro wrestling should be? Just a couple of weeks ago, I saw that someone by the name of Toffaloni was following me on Twitter. Although she would later joke that in Italy Toffaloni is like Smith in the United States, I knew this had to be Nancy's sister, Sandra. With the click of a button, I found myself reconnected to Nancy's family, and by extension felt reconnected to Nancy herself. Sandra and I traded photos and stories, promised to meet up when this crazy virus subsides, and later that night I found myself thinking back to the very first time I met Nancy. It was November 1989 in North Carolina, following an evening of WCW tapings that had seen me drop a picture-perfect elbow off the top apron on nasty Ned Brady. After which, for the first time, I said the words bang bang on camera. It was Kevin Sullivan, along with Jim Cornette, who had come up with the ingenious idea of having me turn on every partner I teamed with, essentially allowing me to get a push without actually winning matches. A push without a push, if that makes sense. And the idea was starting to gain some traction. So after the taping, Sullivan was talking with me about plans for the future, plans that might involve Kevin and I becoming a team. Nancy, married to Kevin at the time, was there for the meeting, and could not have been nicer. That was my first personal observance of her, just how nice she was. Nice and stunningly beautiful, Nancy was a far bigger star than I was at the time, having made a memorable television metamorphosis from wide-eyed innocent Robin Green to the sultry glamorous woman, manager of WWE Hall of Famer Ron Simmons and Butch Reed at the tag team Doom. During my 6-month run with the company, I was always fascinated by how the villainous off-screen bad girl was so kind and approachable in real life. Nancy and I worked closely together in ECW during my feud with the Sandman in 1995. The Sandman/woman odd couple had great chemistry together, and the pairing, with the credibility she brought with her, played a major role in Sandman's breakout success. From there, she went back to WCW, and the angle between her current and future husbands, Kevin Sullivan and Chris Benoit, the feud that both changed and ultimately by extension ended her life. When Chris made the move to WWE in 2000, I saw Nancy many times over the years. Her son Daniel, her constant backstage companion. Each and every time we met, she was the same approachable, down-to-earth person I'd met that November night in 1989. Her smile was always warm, her words were always kind. But like so many others for the past 13 years, I had come to think of Nancy based almost solely on her tragic and untimely death. But these past couple of weeks have really opened my eyes just to how much she accomplished in the wrestling business. While the wrestling world at large may have learned of Nancy in 1989, she was already a seasoned veteran by that point, having become part of Kevin Sullivan's stable as Fallen Angel in 1984. While we as wrestlers sometimes wish we could turn back the clock and have the type of crowd heat that wrestlers of a previous generation enjoyed, it took a special type of person to stand the type of heat created with Kevin Sullivan working as Satanist gimmick in Florida and Southwest Championship Wrestling in the mid-1980s. Nancy was that special type of person. Even fans who did not believe in the legitimacy of wrestling itself believed in the gimmick Sullivan had created, and the heat it created was substantial and genuine. To a certain extent, Nancy was putting her well-being, even her life, at risk every time she went to work. Dark Side of the Ring did an excellent job of uncovering truth behind the shocking 2007 murder-suicide of Nancy, Daniel, and Chris Benoit. In the aftermath of the Spike documentary, fans and historians once again pondered the way that Chris Benoit, one of the finest performers our business has ever seen, could be remembered. It's an important discussion. But equally important to me is that several fans started talking about the career of Nancy Benoit and how she'd been remembered. For the first time I can recall, talk surfaced of Nancy possibly being inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame, a topic I had never really considered it before. But seeing the Dark Side of the Ring, re-establishing contact with Sandra, and looking back on Nancy's career these past couple of weeks has been an eye-opener for me. I would love to see Nancy inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame, under whatever name or character her family and WWE collectively decide. For her work as Fallen Angel, I believe she deserves to be included. For her work as Woman during her first run in WCW when she feuded with Rick Steiner, managed Doom, and managed the Four Horsemen, I believe she deserves to be included. For her run in ECW and her second run with WCW, where she helped create a fascinating angle that blurred the line between storyline and reality, I believe she deserves to be included. You may have noticed throughout this video essay that I have taken a very casual and jovial tone when speaking about Nancy and her life and career. When I started researching her story, I knew how her life ended, but had no real idea about how her life began. Nancy had a full and amazing career in one of the most unique industries in the world. A who's who of wrestling legends has orbited her, and she likewise them. She had crazy arcs, a wild variety of colourful styles and costumes, and drifted between personas with ease. A natural performer and athlete, compounded by her natural beauty and effortless charm. As I was writing my notes, I often smiled to myself or even laughed at the outright madness of the Sullivan storyline and the real-life consequences of it. The black metal makeup, the snakes, the kendo stick fights. I felt I was writing a story about an underrated gem, someone whose career highlights had to be brought back up for a retrospective. I felt this is such a wild wrestling career. We should have retrospective spots and character breakdown videos and her showing up in top 10 lists of greatest managers. Instead, we have somewhat of a void because of how the story ends. It seems that in the effort to silence Chris Benoit's memory, we inadvertently silenced the memory of Nancy too. Some people say a man is made out of mud. A poor man's made out of muscle and blood. Muscle and blood and skin and bone. A mind that's weak and a back that strong. You load 16 tons, and what do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. St. Peter, don't you call me, 'cause I can't go. I owe my soul to the company store.
Do you know why woman always gets what she wants? Because she knows the difference between number 1 and number 2. Ric Flair, you're the world champion man, and I'm the world champion woman.